Tax Subcommittee of Ways and Means to order, and our first bill will be House Bill 477, Representative Sam Watson. Do you want to go ahead and present? Are you six?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Just saying, there's no better bill to talk about than hearing a story about bumblebees and turtles. So, as a conservation easement bill. So, yes. So yes, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I do bring before you today. This is the Georgia Conservation Tax Credits Sunset Extension Bill. This was a bill that we passed back in 2016 and involving conserving our natural resources and conservation easements. All we're wanting to do here is extend that sunset for another 6 years. In the last 6 years, we've conserved over 50,000 acres of land. And with a growing state, we need to make sure that we protect quality of life and our natural resources. And that's what we're doing in this bill. And we just want to make sure that we can do it another 6 years.
And this is just what we know is our Cougar bill.
No, sir. This is the conservation easements, sunset extension.
I'm sorry. Excuse me. Okay.
477 LC 43 1893.
Do we have any questions from members of the committee? Is anybody prepared to testify to this? No public comment? Is this coming out today? Okay, I was being presumptuous, but hearing no questions from the committee, what's the will of the committee? Got a motion to move and got a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Same, no, same sign. Carries unanimously. Thank you. Congratulations to the author of the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Next, we'll have House Bill 587. That's mine. Isn't it? Well, let's. I tell you what. Why don't we do 593 first? You, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Bring before you House Bill 593. I've also been called the Tax Relief Act of 2021. I think, as most of the members here know, Chairman Harrell and the team at Ways and Means last year did propose, and we passed a very comprehensive kind of a tax reform package that was beneficial for all Georgians. But as we moved into kind of a COVID and an uncertain phase, and we've hit a lot of people very hard, we hit the pause button there, and I think this is an opportunity to ease back into giving some folks some of that relief, let people keep a little bit of their own money. It does lower the it lowers the tax burden, but it raises the standard deduction, and relatively simple terms. And so we do some tax relief without a lot of moving parts, and I think it hits the most Georgians that we could get through some sort of tax relief package. So I really appreciate the committee's work on this, and that's by and large the bill. I'll be happy to answer any questions, Mr. Chairman.
Do we have any questions from the members of the committee?
There we go. Can you do another routine, Leader Reeves? So much of this was talked about last session, and listen, it's up to the will of the committee, but I think if we're able to move this forward, I think giving some people some tax relief would be very good right now. I think this is largely, as far as I have heard thus far, a bipartisan effort for us to do as General Assembly, and I welcome that motion if the subcommittee here sees fit. Just for argument's sake, from discussion, a lot of eyes have looked at this, professionals within the accounting environment, and we'll have some reinforcement regarding the fiscal note upcoming, but we've already got a lot of projections that put it in the $100 to $150 million range, really the lower end of that projected.
And that being said, if there's any technical or small changes, we can do that in the full committee if we get it out of here.
We could send it back and move it back forward, or it could be adjusted in full if need be. If again, if this is the will of the committee
Sure.
today.
Sure. Are there any questions? It's pretty substantive. As Chairman Shaw's mentioned, there's been a whale of a lot of work by this committee over the last several years trying to grant rate relief, and especially to our middle class in Georgia. And so don't want to rush into anything, but given the fact that we've had a lot of work on it, are there any questions or any testimony from or comments from the public? Hearing none, what's the will of the committee? I did not hear that. I apologize. Who was the motion by? All right, Debbie. Who's the second by? All right. Pick one. There's no, I'm gonna give it to Patty Bentley, but she's not here. All right. Noel, you get the second. All right. We've got a motion to second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. All right, carries unanimously. Congratulations, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Chairman.
All right. Now, if you don't mind, we'll
Okay, next up, Representative Williamson. He's going to present HB 587.
thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the committee, I bring for you today for your consideration. It's going to be House Bill 587, which will be known as the Georgia Economic Renewal Act of 2021. This is frankly an omnibus bill that has pulled together a lot of pieces that many of which this subcommittee has already seen. That being said, we have some experts at the table that have helped draft these component parts. They were their bills. It's been for the good of the body and for looking at that holistically. They've been combined into one bill, and the chairman asked for me to carry it, and I'm honored to do so. That being said, one of the key components of this bill starts off with the governor's recommendation that we do all we can to enhance our pharmaceutical manufacturing, pharmaceutical medicine manufacturers in Georgia to retain, grow jobs, and attract new medicine and medical manufacturing into the state, as well as those businesses that are making personal protection equipment. So that being said, Leader Jodi Lott had brought this measure before the committee before, and I was wondering if she'd be kind enough to give us an overview, or would you prefer for me to walk through the points and then let the committee ask you any questions? Okay. Okay. All right. Help me find that. Got separate notes for every section. Yeah, if you don't mind, because I'm stumbling trying to find my notes on that one section.
That's no problem. Mike, too, you got me?
I finally found it.
We had a first hearing on this before, members of the committee. Thank you for letting me respond to this. This is the Georgia Made Medical Manufacturing Act, and as was stated, the pharmaceuticals and the medical manufacturing industry specific NEX codes. There are two, and the one is 3391 medical equipment and supplies, and the second is 3254 pharmaceutical and medicine manufacturing. There's an additional 1250 tax credit that will be placed for those new jobs that qualify for the Georgia tax job tax credit. This cannot be paired with the current PPE tax credit that is in existence at this point through COVID. That was done last session. So it's not to be paired, but it does pair with the current job tax credit, 1250 additional. And that is used against your tax liability. Any credit that is in excess can be used on your quarterly and monthly and extended out for a period of 10 years. And really, that's the entire thing.
Any questions on that part?
Okay. Well, the chairman's moving to the next microphone. I do want to point out to the members of the committee that if you have not seen the fiscal note, the high for any given year, it hits a high point estimate on fiscal year 2022 of 4.8 million. I don't quite, if the low amount of economic, or conversely, is between 4.8 and 5.6 million dollar fiscal hit in the year 2022. This fiscal year's minimal is $1 million or less, and moving out to fiscal year 2026, it ranges from 2.4 million to 4.7 million. So in all years, it's effectively $5 million or less. And so it's not a huge hit from a fiscal standpoint relative to the number of jobs that will be coming to Georgia, and the fact that we'd have these medical access to pharmaceutical manufacturing in our home state, along with any personal protection equipment that might be manufactured.
Okay, Mr. Chairman.
Just going to ask Representative Lott and Secretary Williamson, really, I think what we've seen is it not true that we have seen kind of an influx in the manufacturing, and as far as this particular industry sector is concerned, and this would just allow Georgia to further capitalize on those jobs and expanding that part of our economy. Is that kind
Absolutely.
of the intent of this bill?
Yeah, I appreciate you bringing that forward. So, and I know that we did have a speaker last time, so some of you may have missed that from the bioscience area. But we are growing this in Georgia. We hope to grow this more in Georgia. Certainly the nation, after this COVID crisis, has had this conversation about making certain that we are taking care of our own pharmaceuticals, both and our medical manufacturing, but the products that go into specific pharmaceuticals as well. So not even just the end product, but all the products along the way that make this possible for us to grow the industry here, so that we have what we need in a time of crisis, but even just throughout. So definitely Georgia, such as what we have done in the past with cyber and hoping to draw businesses in certain areas, this is on the tops of our minds in Georgia. But again, the whole nation, I think, is thinking in the same way. We would like to incentivize these companies, those companies that are here currently, to be able to continue to grow their businesses here and in the medical manufacturing and the pharmaceutical industries, and offer this new job tax credit for them. But also to incentivize these companies that have home bases elsewhere, or companies that are starting up and thinking to establish their businesses and to bring them to Georgia.
Thank you.
Okay. Continue on.
Thank you, Leader Lott. And then that was section 2. Just for the committee's benefit, we were looking at section 2.1 under part 2, section 2.1 and 2.2-2. Moving on to section 2-3, this deals with our port traffic, and for those enterprises that are having base year port traffic increases, this is extending and enhancing the current code in effect. If you draw your attention to line 91, it says for any tax credit earned pursuant to subsection B of this code section on or after July the 1st of 2021, is some discussion about whether or not the committee might need to look at changing that to January the 1st, 2021. When such tax credit exceeds a business enterprise's liability for taxes imposed by this article in a taxable year, the excess may be taken as a credit against such business enterprise's quarterly or monthly payment under code section 48.7.103 in the same manner as provided under code section 48.740 or 48.740, but not subject to the dollar limitations provided therein. Draw your attention down to lines 114 and 115. Basically, what it will allow is a 100% offset of taxes. Basically, 100% of the unused income tax credits against income could be used against their payroll taxes, payroll withholding taxes. Do I have a good understanding of that, Chairman Shaw? That was new to the bill as well.
It is there a good bit of liability already for the state, and this would just allow them to utilize those withholdings in order to gain those credits. And again, liabilities that are sitting out there currently. So it's a big help there, and you know, really is something that's already owed and due and established. Is that not right? The way I understand it.
Again, this comes as a suggestion of the Georgia Department of Economic Development on that front. And I'm happy to answer any questions the members of the committee. Just interrupt as we go, because it's basically all these separate bills that have been combined. Then let me get back to my notes. Well, like I said, I'm scrambling. Here we go. So then we're also Brian, if you'd help draw me to the attention, I'm looking for the in section 2-4. This is the mega. I'm sorry, what? This is the 145. There we go. That's what I'm looking for. All right. So under our existing job tax credit program, for whatever reason, it's had a mega tax credit program. Has had a limit of only 4,500 new full-time employee jobs, and nobody can answer the question why we came up with a 4,500 job cap when the intention is to grow, to attract large industries with as many high-paying jobs as possible to Georgia. So it doesn't make any sense to have a cap, and lines 146 through 149 remove that cap. So it's pretty self-explanatory. Then we move into the lines 161 through 166. We start talking about the discussion of high impact aerospace defense projects, which takes us into the discussion about what are we calling this section? It was formerly House Bill 481, and it's this bill is 481. We're talking about high impact aerospace defense projects, and I believe that Leader Reeves had presented that to subcommittee as House Bill 481, correct?
And well, actually, I have not. This is the first time that this piece has been presented. So it was filed, and we're very very grateful that it's been put into this omnibus bill. I think it makes perfect sense to have it there. And what I would like to do is just kind of briefly talk through the concept here. And I have Andrew Dill from Lockheed, and we also have Robert Head and Julie Dow from Lockheed that are online if we need them to explain some of the nuts and bolts. But to the committee, this is big time stuff. This is what we would describe as a generational opportunity. In the next 1 to 3 years, the Department of Defense is going to be taking bids on 3 projects that are going to be the future of American military aviation defense. And these 3 projects, frankly, are going to be the future of military defense in the air. And we want Georgia to be right in the middle of this future. We want Georgia to be the epicenter of this future. These options would be open to any qualified companies. There's obviously only a handful of companies that operate in this space. We're very fortunate. While any company could attempt to come to Georgia, or if they're not already here, and bid for these, and competition is king, and whoever puts together the best bid should be awarded the project. But that being said, we are fortunate that we have right here in our state, one of the fibers of our business community is Lockheed Martin. And growing up in Cobb County and being in Cobb County now, I know that Lockheed and its positioning right there with Dobbins is just a very, very, very important piece of the Cobb County economy. And over the years, I remember, this is a true story, I'm not making this up. When I was a kid, my grandparents lived off South Cobb Drive, and so when we would drive from Kennesaw to their house, we would go down Fairground Street in Marietta and hang a right on Delk Road, which then turns into South Cobb Drive. We drove right past Lockheed every single time we went to my grandparents' house, and when we would come home, we would always have the issue of we had to either be before the whistle or after the whistle, because when the whistle blew, there were 15,000 cars that were trying to get out of that parking lot, and it caused quite a traffic problem. But that was a great thing, those 15,000 cars. Over time, because of some projects have been phased out, that parking lot is not nearly as full as it used to be, but the facility still maintains the capacity to take on the biggest and best projects that aviation has to offer. And so what this bill will do is it will allow Georgia companies that are qualified and choose to bid to be able to be eligible for certain incentives. And some of these incentives are greater than what law currently allows, but it's also important to note that it also requires double the investment that is currently the threshold investment. And we've worked, the Department of Economic Development has worked on this matter for some time, and has worked with Lockheed and the Concept of General. The Georgia Chamber, the Metro Chamber, and the Cobb County Chamber are extraordinarily in support of this matter. And it is important to say this, and I know that everybody, I think, gets a little bit tired of hearing my rah-rah about Georgia Tech, but y'all, our school right down the road here produces the finest mechanical, electrical, aerospace, and industrial engineers as any public engineering school in this country, in the world. And we are producing exceptional engineers here in Georgia, and a lot of them are leaving to go to California and other places because the jobs that they seek are there. And these are the kind of work that these jobs bring. This is the kind of jobs that our Georgia Tech engineers are prepared for and they desire. And this will really allow us to cultivate that talent. Even our friends at the University of Georgia, Marcus, have engineers now. So, I got to give credit where credit's due, I guess. But we have a lot of engineering going on in this state, and this is an opportunity where we can really increase our aptitude with engineering. And this is big time stuff, and it's a generational opportunity, and it will be 20 years before Department of Defense is in a position where we are looking at projects, that are generational type. That's what this is. And if we can get something like this in place and help a Georgia company to receive some incentives, and so that they can bid and receive this, and this will not only benefit the company receive it, but the collateral effects that come with this, as far as the industries that come with something like this, when you start gaining these projects, the manufacturing projects and efforts and all of the other jobs. I mean, there's some data that according to a recent study performed by an independent third party using a model developed by the Bureau of Economic Analysis, the potential economic impact could be over 3,300 direct jobs, more than 17,000 indirect and induced jobs in supporting independent sectors, and over 1,900 construction jobs. That's over 22,000 high-paying, high-tech jobs. This is a absolutely fantastic opportunity. And Mr. Dill, is there anything that you want to add before we have our friends online talk? Or I don't know if the committee wants to ask questions and you want us to answer those questions in that way. How do you want us to proceed, Mr. Chairman?
Well, why don't you go ahead and let Mr. Dill, he's here, and then when he gets through.
And I'll skip our expert, but thank you, Leader Reeves. And that's great. And you mentioned Georgia and Georgia Tech, but I also mentioned, I see our friend with the Kennesaw State mask on. We at Lockheed, we've hired Kennesaw State grads, Georgia Southern grads, all within the last year, right? Engineers that want to stay. I did. Georgia Southern, Statesboro's in my mix.
If you want Leader Burns to be on board.
In fact, I'll tell you, Chairman, that the last two Skunk Works ADP, our most high-tech engineers came from Georgia Southern, last two of the hires. So I got to speak to that group the other day. So a great credit to South Georgia and with the work they're doing. But when we look at Georgia, there's a lot of reasons why it's favorable, right? Favorable for manufacturing, but it's also favorable for the military and national defense and who our customer is. Take my mask. And so when you think about the work we do it in conjunction with Dobbins Air Reserve Base. We do it at Robbins because of sustainment. So those bases are critical to what we do because the customer we serve is the United States military. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Robert Head, who is our vice president, to share a little bit more about what the opportunity is for the state of Georgia. Robert, over to you.
Thank you, Andrew. And thank you, Chairman Smith and Chairman Williamson, Leader Reeves, of course, and members of the subcommittee. Appreciate the opportunity to talk about this bill today and this opportunity for Georgia. Leader Reeves highlighted that we worked with, Commissioner Wilson, but I also want to highlight that we've been working with Governor Kemp and his team on this for some time, and just appreciate all their support. As Andrew would tell you, Lockheed has proudly called Georgia home for over 70 years. And annually that, rounds out to about $3.5 billion of annual economic impact throughout the entire state. We also hire a lot of veterans, and hopefully these opportunities will allow us to hire even more. But right now, 40% of our employees in Georgia are military veterans. As everyone knows, we built the F-22 Raptor, C-5 Galaxy, and over 2,500 C-130s right here in Marietta, in Georgia. And we continue to build the C-130J in Marietta. And we also now build the center wing assembly for the F-35, which is the most advanced fighter in the inventory for our current, all three of our services and our closest allies. So we're still doing great work in Marietta, but what we want to do is build on that. We've got a very close relationship with Dobbins Air Reserve Base, key partners, throughout the years. We couldn't do it without strong support of the state for our manufacturing, and we couldn't do it without Dobbins because we use that runway. So we are synonymous with Dobbins. So this legislation, this bill could enable Lockheed Martin to bring advanced development work to Georgia, including several cutting-edge development and production programs, providing high-skilled, high-paying, long-term jobs. These programs will continue to expand the air superiority for the Department of Defense and build upon the advanced capability provided by the F-35 and F-22. These cutting-edge aircraft and hypersonic programs provide a unique opportunity for Georgia to position itself on the forefront of advanced technology in the future of aerospace development for decades. In monetary terms, these programs represent over $70 billion in value over the next 15 years. The Department of Defense needs to recapitalize its mobility fleet as well. So as you all know, Georgia holds the title as the longest running cargo production line in the world with the C-130. And we certainly don't want another state to seize that opportunity and build the future cargo airplane outside of Georgia. I mentioned hypersonics a moment ago. Hypersonic programs are literally the cutting edge of science and technology. Oh, that's great. Hold on, I lost my my lights. Life on Zoom, I apologize. Hypersonics refer to the speed of Mach 5 or greater than 3,800 miles per hour. So much faster than the Lockheed SR-71, which is the fastest plane ever built. So we're pursuing a number of opportunities there in that space. So bringing this work to Georgia will only add to the state's reputation as a hub for advanced aerospace technology. The opportunities that these incentives provide in the legislation represent more than 3,300 potential long-term jobs and up to 1.6 billion in advanced manufacturing investment for the state. These jobs offer 40% higher in salary than the average wage in the state. And as Leader Reeves and Andrew mentioned, are tailor-made for Georgia's world-class institutions like Georgia Tech, University of Georgia, Kennesaw State, and Georgia Southern. We want to help keep those students in Georgia as opposed to going elsewhere. Now, to cover a few technical points of the bill, the changes in this bill only apply to qualified high-impact aerospace defense projects. Specifically, it allows eligible companies to use two existing Georgia tax credit programs simultaneously, one based on jobs and one based on investment, which otherwise could only be used independently. The companies may also utilize the manufacturing facility tax credit program and take up to 100 million in tax credits instead of the current 50 million cap for a qualified project. Additionally, companies may start to take the credit when they reach 500 million in investment and 1,000 jobs. This aspect of the bill is critical to our ability to be competitive and win these programs in the time frame we're dealing with. But I want to be clear, companies must certify that they will still meet the existing requirements of 800 million in investment and 1,800 jobs. So when legislation allows companies to take up to 100 million in credit, the company must, I say must, invest more than 1.6 billion to receive 100 million in credit, because the benefit is based on a fixed percentage, which has not changed in this bill. The legislation makes no additional changes to the metrics of the existing statutory programs and offers nothing upfront to the company. In order to maximize the benefits of the legislation, the project must be performed by a prime aerospace defense contractor, support the mission of the Georgia Joint Defense Commission, the Governor's Defense Initiative, and employ 1,800 and invest 1.6 billion. Cost is increasingly a determining factor for our business with the Department of Defense. We like to say cost is king. So to be competitive with other states and other companies who receive incentives in other places, we really need help to give us a cost competitive edge in these competitions. Cost drives everything right now in the department. Now, these opportunities will develop for the next 1 to 3 years. And we really see this as Georgia's chance and hopefully our chance to make sure the state is at the table when these programs are decided. So I ask for your favorable consideration of the bill and the legislation. Let's position Georgia for the future. And let's go help provide the best equipment to our men and women in uniform and help them fly, fight, and win. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I'll stop here, and Andrew and Julie and I can take questions from the committee as desired. Thank you again.
Thank you very much for that testimony. I appreciate from Leader Burns and Mr. Dill as well. Secretary Williamson, I think with relatively limited time left in this room,
Sure.
I'm going to let you move to the next section of the bill so we can at least get it all covered today in hopes. But thank you once again for the testimony. Appreciate y'all being here on that particular section.
We'll move forward with that. I just have to say that similar to Leader Reeves, my childhood was spent going up and down. Is that 41 out there? And we'd go close to Lockheed. My uncle worked for Lockheed. He happened to be an Auburn engineer. I think he handled material purchasing for the C-5 Galaxy. And his son is an Auburn engineer. He's currently the director of the F-35 program planning and scheduling out in Fort Worth. So I'd love nothing more than to try to entice his family back to his home roots in Georgia. The point about the workforce jobs, 15,000. I'm part of that World War II children, the baby boomer generation. And when all my friends' fathers came back from fighting World War II, many of whom didn't have much of an educational background, but they could find jobs in high-paying industries like Hateville and Doraville, the car manufacturing plants. And many of them went to work and drive all the way from Monroe, Georgia, Walton County to Lockheed, putting together aircraft. So those high-paying jobs, those important, proud jobs that manufacturing used to enjoy in Georgia have slowly gone away, and this is a way to help bring that back. The final.
Excuse me, can we get any of these jobs to Middle Georgia to the southern part?
We get to that in the next part of this bill. There's nothing to preclude them from going down there.
Well, that's what I'm asking.
Joe.
Everything's Atlanta. We need the
But-
rest of Georgia.
And I'll speed it up, Mr. Chairman, but we're talking about generational programs. Well, who in the world would have envisioned in 1954, when the first C-130 rolled down the line, that they'd be building that same airframe, essentially the same design and airframe in 2021? And Mr. Deal mentioned to me that the engineer that designed that plane you met recently, and his comment was that if he had it to do over again, wouldn't change a thing about the design. Is that correct? So you're talking about this could have the potential to have multi-generational effects for Georgia. So thank you for allowing me to wade into that project. So moving on through the bill, the next section is going to be the Georgia Agribusiness extension of the Georgia Agribusiness and Rural Jobs Act. It is section, help me there, Brian. 436. Thank you. The Rural Jobs Act has been a very successful program that the state of Georgia implemented in 2017, rather. Representative Jason Shaw is currently on the Public Service Commission, carried this legislation. Its design was to go into counties under 50,000 people with a specific goal of infusing capital into small businesses in Georgia that were rural in nature. That it's not changed. It's been very successful. The way it was capped at $100 million, the way the program worked was that companies that wanted to participate in this space had to petition the Georgia Department of Community Affairs through an application process to qualify for up to $100 million of tax credits that would be funded in part through premium taxes they could qualify for. So if I could run the math real quick for you. So for example, you say you had 5 rural funds competing for $100 million, and each one of them's application was received, they would proportionally share that 100 million. So each one of them would qualify for $20 million, and they could raise 60% through the Georgia Premium Tax Credit programs. So they would be awarded $12 million each premium tax credits, what they could turn around and monetize. They basically sell them into the insurance industry with this caveat: no premium tax credits could be used by the insurance industry for 2 years, and the third year is limited to 15 million aggregate for the entire 100 million. So obviously they have to be sold as somewhat of a discount to capture the time value of the money, and anybody with a finance background like most people have in this room would understand that they're not going to enjoy the full 12 million, but they're responsible for coming up with their part of the 20 million. The sale of the premium tax credits just helps preload that 20 million for a substantial piece of it. But then they have to prove to the Department of Community Affairs that they have their $20 million ready, and then they have 24 months to sort of a shot clock to make qualified investments into rural businesses in Georgia. And again, 250 employees or less, agricultural in nature, and in counties of 50,000 or less. There's a laundry list of the successful programs that have gone through. The Department of Community Affairs has had no objections to the way the program's been run, and having formerly served on their board as Chairman Shaw, and I actually served at the same time on DCA. There's some good people over there, and they do a real good job of vetting fiscal programs, and that's the case here. So of the $100,845,000 that's been invested, it's created and retained over 1,500 new jobs. And again, it goes everything from biodegradable plastics all the way down through farm and timberland projects, but it's all about rural Georgia. If you haven't seen one of the handouts, it's got a great geographic spread all around Georgia. Not many takers up in Northwest Georgia, but it's a great spread throughout the entire state. So it's having the intended effect of going to some of our poorest counties, especially right down through here. Be happy to answer any questions about the success of that bill. There's only really be happy to answer any questions on it.
You have a quick question with
Sure.
Chairman Watson.
Two quick,
Sure.
real quick questions. I know the definition on line 454, we've made a slight change there, and we've got one or more rural areas or qualified areas in the state, provided that such business is. What is a qualified area?
You know, that's a good question, because actually I had asked that question early on and failed to catch it in this iteration. I'll get an answer for you for that prior to, like meeting the full committee.
And then the second quick question is, I know we've been talking 100 million. Now, is there a second round that'll be another 100 million?
That is correct.
So
So 100 million is deployed now. So this will be a brand new round of $100 million.
Okay.
Yeah, the 100 million is fully funded.
There's still only 100 million going forward.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
I'd like to draw the chairman's attention to lines 474 to 475. I have talked to the interested parties in this bill, and they agree with me that we could tighten that language up about where it says such businesses may not meet the definition of an eligible business at the time of such follow-on investments. Gave me I'd like to just make sure that those jobs on a go-forward basis, the business doesn't get up and running on one program and then morph into something that wouldn't otherwise be eligible under the program. But I'd be fine, and I'm assuming the members of the committee would be fine if we raise the job numbers at that point, because take off the job cap, because that would have the intended effect of growing jobs in rural Georgia. So for example, if they made an investment in a company with 100 jobs, and all of a sudden it was wildly successful, went to 500 employees, it would nothing preclude them from continuing to access this capital source and continue to retain those jobs and grow in rural Georgia. So they said they would be very open-minded on that. And then, and I do want to ask about the qualified areas, because I have no idea what that means. Good question.
No other questions, Representative Williamson. I think you've got one more section on
Right.
short line.
So short line railroad was carried by Representative Patty Bentley. I've already mentioned her earlier today. I hated that she wouldn't be here, because she's been passionate about this program from the minute she got involved with carrying this bill several years ago. This simply extends the sunset date on it. There have been it's had the intended effect. We classify our railroads as 1, 2, and 3 in Georgia. We don't have any 2s, and that's just because there's none that particular size. But the Class 3 railroads, to remind the committee, is I call it the fingers that are completely unprofitable due to the cost structure of the Class 1 railroads, which, the long hauls, the CSXs, the Norfolk Southerns that primarily service Georgia. That's our main 2 Class 1 railroads in Georgia. But, they go transcontinental, but it's inefficient and cost. It's not, they can't make money on the 20 miles of track, 5 miles of track that are fingering out into, again, rural Georgia and counties like Walton County. we have the Great Walton Railroad there, and I have no idea if they've participated in this program. I suspect they have because most of the short lines have. And what it's doing effectively is helping keeping up that important infrastructure. Is cost is still capped at $3,500 per mile, and of track, and as you can imagine, is enormously expensive keeping up a railroad right of way and keeping the riprap or whatever they call it and the timbers in place to have a safe railroads. So it's had that its intended effect, and it will. All this does is it extends the sunset. Be happy to answer any questions.
Representative Carpenter.
Just wanted to make a comment more than anything on that piece of the legislation. You know, I think we're going to see some more freight and logistics information as we go through this session, and this can kind of continues the trend of Georgia investing in freight and rail to keep trucks out of the road and promote economic development. So thanks for adding this in the bill.
Yeah, well, thank you. We're going to thank Representative Bentley when we see her for bringing this measure in the first place. Again, it's by those inland ports up in Chatsworth. Bypass all the traffic on our expressways, especially the metropolitan Atlanta.
I don't see any other questions, Representative. I just, if I can, without sounding patronizing, brag on you just a little bit. I know you took on one piece of this bill willingly and then gladly and willfully jumped in and took on all these other pieces, and no small task. And I know you've done a great deal of homework on this, and I really appreciate you, taking up this initiative, and it's good for our economy.
It's
and
my honor. It's good for Georgia.
That being said, I know it is a big bill. A lot of these pieces, we have heard parts of them in sub already. There are some moving parts, so we can choose, as a subcommittee to move this on to full and continue to vet it, or we can bring it back to you again. And there are a couple of things that I know word-wise that we want to qualify, and it would probably not substantively change the bill, but it would provide a couple of clarifications on some things that have been brought up. So we may look at a substitute.
Chairman's pleasure. But because you're correct, I'd like to get Representative Watson's questions or Chairman Watson's questions answered. I'd like to tighten up a language that I discussed, and I'd like to revisit some of these effective dates to make sure that's in the best interest and intended purposes of the bill.
So, yes, sir.
Seeing those changes will likely occur in the next full committee meeting. I'll make a motion to be passed.
Okay, Representative Wiedauer has made the motion that, considering that those will be made and made very clear as to what they will be in full committee, that we move this bill forward out of subcommittee. Do I hear a second? There's a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, like sign. Okay, well, thank you very much. Is there anything further from any of the members of the committee? Hearing none, we stand adjourned. Thank you again.